All right, we're back for episode 136 of Digital Divination.
136 reminds me about how I run Lundeen, am an employee of Wizards of the Coast, and the opinions I express here are mine and not theirs.
Well done.
Well
which,
done. It's
which part of that number reminded you of that the most? The 1, the 3,
Because
or
it
the
is
6?
the 1 plus 3 plus 6 makes a perfect 10.
All right, there you go. Math.
I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
Hey,
Well, we have something to talk about this week that is new and exciting.
it is,
We have
and I
something-
got to tell you
wait.
guys that it's just super exciting and super new, and I'm sure the two of you don't even know this yet, because I forgot to tell you until just now. Last
Oh.
weekend, we officially adopted Coco. She is
No,
part of the
That's
family
that's
now.
That is
amazing.
super
Yes.
exciting.
Yes, it was.
And where's Coco?
She's out there on the couch sleeping right now.
Where
but,
Coco should be.
Where
Okay.
she should be.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be in here too much for some reason, even though we have a lovely dog bed over here for her. We it's been a couple months and she hadn't not a lot of interest shown for her with her being adopted, and with the shelter trying putting stuff out obviously, but you can only do so much, and she's so comfortable with us and just our baby. So I thought I'd let you all
Amazing.
know.
That is cool.
I love hearing about forever families getting made like that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, Ron is a big proponent of adoptions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fair enough. Yeah, love it.
Animals, kids, you name it, I'll adopt it. That's
All right.
housemate, right?
Oh, really? Are you adopting one of those?
No,
Like
and that
long-term
I've
ones?
adopted them into my household. Maybe.
okay.
That's,
I see.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Well, I'm really interested in adopting a new game system, Starfinder Second Edition.
All right, good segue.
Really good segue.
Good segue.
All right, so at PaizoCon 2025, we had...
Which is going on literally right now while we're recording, right?
It is.
Yeah.
This is Sunday, so it's not over. It's not over. All the panels are over, though, I think. Yeah. All the panels are over. We can talk about the panels.
Yes.
So
all the panels and all the actual plays and everything.
Yeah, the Starfinder stuff that we're going to talk about, new stuff, old stuff that was mentioned, the keynote, organized play talked about it. There are Starfinder adventures, and the last Starfinder thing was the Starfinder Star Path, which is the release schedule for 2025. So we got lots of ground to cover. Let's get started.
Wait, are they Star Path finding? Are they finding the Star Path?
No, I don't think they need to find it. They know it, and they told us about it.
Fair
right.
enough. Okay.
Their path nowhere.
Knowing.
Wait, that doesn't work.
They know the path. They know the path.
Right.
They know the way.
Yes. So, interesting stuff. So, started off with, of course, Eric Mona being super, super excited at the beginning there. And his hair is getting wilder every year, too. I noticed.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you work from home.
Yeah. I don't know. Ron's hair is pretty, no.
I have to go into the office at least 2 days a week.
Exactly.
That's why you're. I got a haircut, even though I haven't been in the office since November. Anyway, so Eric Mona did the keynote. He's the publisher, and I never knew this. He said this thing, Chief Creative Officer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I always hear him referred to as the publisher, and I thought, well, you know what? Chief Creative Officer sounds way cooler.
But you can be both.
If you're in the industry, publisher does a lot.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm just saying
publishing related things, right?
Yeah.
Carries a little more gravitas.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway, so any thoughts on the keynote before? I mean, I can talk on all this stuff, but I want to let our esteemed colleagues here have some input.
Well, if I could deviate just a little bit from Starfinder for a little while, the keynote ran through a lot of Pathfinder releases I was very excited about as well. Very excited about hearing some of those and some of the upcoming things. Pulled back the curtains a little bit on some of the things that we'd seen. I'd heard, I think it was leaked about the Lost Omens, was it Draconic Codex, I think it's called, that just sort of all dragons. That was neat to see announced and see the stuff
Eleanor
in there.
Was really excited about that, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Eleanor was very excited.
Yes.
But it's that That I think is gonna be awesome. That might be the Pathfinder book that I'm most looking forward to
Oh, you're gonna love
of
it.
all the stuff that they were talking about.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, except of course Battle Cry written by
No,
my
no,
friend Jason Keeley.
no, no,
That
no, don't talk about. No, 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 don't
okay.
worry about it. The Draconic Codex is way more exciting in a lot of ways.
Oh, well, now
It's
I'm
good. The
really
battle
looking
cry's
forward to
great.
that.
Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
Now I've insulted John for who wrote for it. But well, John, just to, I mean, again, just to continue to deviate, when we did our panel on the Hellfire Crisis, we did talk about the steam turtle. So we
You
said the art
did?
of
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't even know
Logan
if
was
the
like,
steam
I
turtle
like
made it in there, so,
of course, about well, it was good. Did I tell you I don't know if I told this story on the air or just to one of you all, and sort of behind the scenes. We got this sketch for. I was like, Steam Turtle, gotta have the art of that. And we got the
Yeah.
sketch back for it. The artist had gotten a little bit confused and basically drew a Starfinder version. It was like this futuristic, this sort of like modern looking like device. I'm like,
Not
this
a
looks a little
steampunk
extra
one, it
modern.
was like a
And
fusion one. Yeah.
yeah, we talked back to him. Oh, they got a little mixed up between Starfinder and Pathfinder, and so we went back and it comes
I
back. It
hope you
looks
kept
great.
that other art, though, that sounds pretty
Yeah,
cool too.
yeah. I'm sure they got the sketch somewhere.
That's great. I wonder if they happen to be like, "John Godek, the Starfinder guy?" Well, of course it's gotta be a
Well,
Starfinder thing,
I
yeah.
don't think the artist knows who writes the
Oh,
things that
yeah,
they're
it's just
drawing
kinda
exactly,
Yeah.
unless you're, someone
Friend
who
of the
happens
artist or whatever,
friend of the
yeah.
art, yeah, who's doing the yeah, exactly. Like my friend Chris Kimball, who did a lot of Pathfinder stuff. Sometimes he's like, oh, I'm drawing this thing. I'm like, that's the thing I wrote. Anyway, but the Starfighter keynote was good. Getting in, just sort of, I'm trying to remember, trying to keep it all straight. What where we
Yes.
hear the things specifically. So we
Yes.
could just talk a little bit about like what we know, and not necessarily talk about individual where we individually heard it.
Yeah, I think that's fine because a lot of stuff was reiterated throughout all
Yeah.
the sessions. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
The
was
only
just my notes are just organized in how I watch them, so that's how
Fair
I
enough.
wanted to do
The
it.
only the only thing about the Starfinder keynote that I remember is that when Jenny was talking about the Infinity deck, she corrected us,
Yes,
and later in the panel, she
yes.
said Bullman instead of yours truly.
I know, I
But
made a
This
big
is
made a
that
note
big
you
in
know,
here.
see, wait, that is also on my sticky note as well to point out. The Infinity
Was
deck
Dustin. Dustin said that.
Oh, Dustin
yeah,
said
is
okay.
actually the coolest in-game thing I've heard of in a long time. And even though, frankly, Lost Omens Draconic Legacy is the thing I'm most excited about for Pathfinder, the most excited I am about a Paizo thing announced at all of PaizoCon is this Infinity deck because the in-world reason for the deck to exist as an out of world play aid is just genius, right?
Yeah,
It's a deck that was played before the gap, but nobody remembers any of the rules for it,
Right.
right?
I think that's really
And so
cool. Yeah.
people have had to rebuild not one, but up to four different games that you could play with this.
possibly an
I
infinity number of games.
Right.
an
But I
infinity
think we have
number of games.
rules for
Yeah,
so
yeah, yes. There are rules for 4 games.
yeah, no, so we
Um,
have some art for this that I'll put up and I
oh yeah,
put it
yeah.
in
Ours
in
too.
our Discord. So Jason, could you tell us a little bit about the art that we have here?
Yeah, the art we have here is just going to show you some suits and some cards, some face cards. What's not really shown in this art is how the symbols, in the corners, and I think the numbers are going to be shiny foil.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's gonna look so good. We don't have here the back of the card, too, but
Right.
those look pretty awesome too. And it was a lot of fun to work on, just sort of like figuring out what kind of art it would look like, and to make it a little more interesting than just kind of like a number and a symbol, like on a playing card. Or in the case of like the face cards that some of that you see there, what do those look like? And so it was a lot
The
of fun to make
Sharon
this one.
of those.
Yeah, that's the Sheeran
Yeah.
Starship Captain.
And there's 5 suits. It looks like
Yes.
there's a galaxy, a star, a planet, a moon, and a starship.
Yeah, it kind of goes from and we try to work that if there's any reason you needed to know which suit beat another suit in the game, you could just go by size of astronomical object, right? Moons
Oh,
beat
oh, I
starships,
see.
planets beat moons, stars beat planets, and galaxies beat stars, basically, right? So
Got it.
Neat.
yeah,
Good to know. Yeah, so that was one of the things that was announced in there.
I'm
Um,
excited to see this thing in physical form
yeah.
when it comes
Now,
Gen Con.
one of the things that this is gonna come out in physical form. It's not available yet
Yeah.
in digital form, but
No.
it sounds like that from Jenny mentioned this in another panel, that they're looking at, um, getting it for Foundry or for something else. One of the things that was mentioned is that all the books, all these things coming out, all the releases they talked about, all the adventures are all coming out with Foundry
Yeah.
support right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so good.
Including Murder in Metal City. Now, I know I'm jumping ahead for the things in order because I'm going to the Starfinder panel, but I'm gonna
Oh,
jump
but
ahead anyway, John. Murder in Metal City. I was really interested to hear that this is a whole game in a box that has a whole bunch of components in it
yeah,
to help you have your game around the table, not a beginner box. They've been clear about that, I think, in their
Yeah.
messaging from the beginning,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Jenny reiterated it here. But it is sort of an entire lengthy adventure where all of the components are in this box. And that's the reason I was initially really excited to get it. Still am, frankly. I think that I'd pulled back a little bit in my interest because I heard it was for first level only, that you wouldn't level at all during this thing.
right.
But the Jenny kind of sold me on it during
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
the the star map, the star path. It was anyway. I think it's a thing I'm going to pick up, and I got more excited hearing about how it was going to be all these components you need. They're going to be really tactile in it,
Right.
and then heard it was going to be Foundry, and then Thirsty came in to say, so if you're a streamer, right, this is a thing you can use, and I'm like, how interesting that this product that is sold as having a significantly higher than usual amount of tactile components to it is also intended for streaming or other online play and is going to be supported that way right out of the gate. That was really
Mhm.
the fact that I would have thought one or the other of those to be true, and the fact that it's both of them, I thought really surprised me.
Well, it's also the only adventure, in addition to the Starfinder Society adventures, it's the only adventure that's coming out right at Gen Con release.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's true.
this is Guilt of the Grave World
Grave World.
doesn't come out until October.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
So if you want to play something and stream it, it's either going to be Society Adventures, which two are going to drop in August, and then basically two every month after that, right? Or you got to do Murder in Metal City.
I mean,
So,
or your own. I don't know.
or your own
You
homebrew.
know, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have a good sense of like what percentage of streamers stream published adventures versus those that kind of do a homebrew thing. I know as far as actual play goes, a lot of the very biggest actual play on the D&D side are elaborate homebrew things
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the Critical Role. Some of the ones I've sort of picked up since, every one of them is maybe they use something published as a jumping off point, but only very initially or tangentially. So it's interesting to be able to let streamers know you can use this published adventure. We're going to make it very easy for you to do that. Go and do it. That that's
Yeah.
hitting, I think, a really interesting sort of piece of the market.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think like the Pathfinder actual plays kind of skew a little more towards stuff that's already published, since
Yeah.
Paizo's,
So,
main thrust is also publishing these really well-made adventures,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, yeah. I mean, sort of continuing that along with on to Starfinder is going to be great. I think we're
mhm.
going to continue to see the maybe even newer, new streamers popping up.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I will say, Ron, that you are actually keeping track with the keynote because that's the first big thing they really started talking about.
There you go.
Because
yes.
they started with Starfinder, and the first thing they really started hitting on was the Murder in Middle City standalone adventure, includes pre-gens for like all the core classes, um, contains GM aids,
Mhm.
tools to help um, new GMs or people getting started with Starfinder Second Edition for the first time. Players just moving over. So a lot of really cool things. And did you catch kind of the kickoff, how they kick off this adventure?
Of Murder in Metal City?
Yeah.
No.
I missed that.
I
So,
mean, sure I heard, but I'm not recalling. What enlighten me.
yes. So, apparently, it begins with the players receiving a message from tier 99 professor. Guess they call him Tyranny. Basically saying, if you're receiving this message,
Yeah.
I've had an unexpected shutdown. That is, I'm dead. And then it kind of goes from there. So I thought that was kind of a really Mike Kim will talk more about that later on
Yes,
in the
yes.
adventure
Yeah, I
section.
remember that,
But I thought that was I thought, well, that's really cool. And I was thinking a tier 99 professor seems pretty high too. So
What tier are
so
you, Professor Wise, John?
I'm probably I'm probably, maybe 40s, I'm not I'm not very far up the food chain at that. So they talked quite a bit about that. Then they went into the first adventure path for Starfinder, and they called it this several times, Guilt of the Grave World.
Yeah, I think they
And
want to ensure that people realize that they are still doing adventure paths. It's
right,
just that they, might not have the same exact form as they did in the past in terms of. I mean, we had Mechageddon being sort of one book as well, but like the Guilt of the Grey World is going to be a book, but it's just not going to be like as maybe as massive as a Mechageddon or a
right, and
Skeleton
that
Strike.
actually came up in a question later on. I think in the final panel, talking or somebody asked if they're going to be doing longer form adventures and what's going on. So, uh, Murder in Metal City is 64 pages, which
Yeah.
is how long a standalone adventure is for Starfinder First Edition in one book of an AP. Um, Guild to the Grave World is 128 pages. So it's roughly equivalent to two AP books, not
So
like a
so
full
2
three.
levels long.
Well,
Well, no, it goes from one to
it goes
five.
from levels 1 to 5.
Okay.
But normally
So
an
it
AP
must
book would go from 1 to 3 or something like that, right?
right,
I know. I'm
Yeah.
joking because Murder in Metal City is 64 pages, but
right.
only spans 1 level, so twice as long would span 2 levels, but no, it sounds like it is more than that.
Well, did you hear what Jenny said about why they did that?
Well, I remember that she'd said that she really wanted you to kind of get to know your character and
Right.
experience kind of all they had. I really appreciate that. I feel like
Yeah, I
there
thought so too.
is kind of a rush to level in a lot of level-based games that people kind of they don't sort of learn all the things their characters can and can't do at the level they're at before the next thing they know they're off to another level. So something that slows that down. That I said earlier that it sort of lost my interest being only one level because I thought there just kind of wouldn't be very much to it. And I said Jenny
Mhm.
got my interest again. This is why because she's
Right.
like it's going to be 64 pages and it's going to be so much stuff at that level. Great.
Mhm. So, yeah, I think they, when she said we didn't want to make it overly taxing to have to learn to level up in it, to be able to just focus just kind of on playing Starfinder. So I think this makes a really great entry level tool for a new player because I think
Oh, yeah.
that
Well,
somebody will
but
get
not a
really
but not
excited.
a beginner box, and I think that
No.
with the what they're trying to do, that Jenny sort of tipped her hand a little bit, was to say that you've been a player and you're interested in being a GM for the first time, or you're
Right.
trying to step into GMing in kind of a virtual way. This is going to hold your hand to do it. You don't need
Mhm.
to remember what are all the items I gave out, what are all the clues
Right.
I gave out, who are all the NPCs. We're going to help you remember those. And my
Right.
assumption is those are the GM aids that were mentioned
Right.
in the keynote,
Right.
and that's
Right.
just the kind of thing that new GMs really it helps lower the intimidation factor of jumping in and becoming a GM for the first time. So it is an acquisition product, but not an acquisition product for new players. It's an acquisition product for new GMs, and that is
Right.
critical when you're launching a new edition of a game. Very smart.
So, yeah, so I thought that was pretty good. Anyway, getting back to Guilt to the Grave World. So, like I said, it's 128 pages, and it's written by Mike Bramnick. Um, and there's a couple interesting things in here. They mentioned that they're going to have cinematic starship combat, and specifically, they mentioned that this is going to run like a complex hazard.
Right. Yeah.
And then later on, they mentioned basically it's going to include kind of victory points type of process for including things. And they mentioned that, I mean, that's how cinematic combat's going to work. And they
Yeah.
did say how I guess it must be in GM Core, they talk a little bit about that. They're giving 3 examples of cinematic Starship combat to show you how to do it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. There's going to be 2, well, there's going to be a versatile heritage and an ancestry in this adventure.
Yep.
So a corpse folk virtual heritage. So regardless of what ancestry you play, you can play an undead version of them. So
Don't they have that in the playtest rules? Isn't the what is it, the Bromai?
the
Let's say
Borai,
the Borai and a corpse folk are slightly different ways to
Okay.
kind of do that kind of thing. A Borai is that what is it? Like you died, but your body is still technically alive, and so you're kind of someone who is basically possessing your own body. Yeah, a ghost who's possessing their own body in a way.
Okay.
But corpse folk is like you're an undead. That's like playing like the skeleton ancestry, right? Like it's just like you probably have whatever the limited undead benefits are for ancestry. You don't get necessarily
right?
all the goodies for being undead, but most likely it's just by like, hey, yeah, you're just a dead dragon folk, a dead, you know, Circesian, whatever.
Yeah. And they'll have an Elibrium ancestry as well. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, Librans being just sort of the humans with big heads, kind of classic alien look.
Yeah.
Okay.
They mentioned a lot of talk about Zoe is going to be in here, possibly a kind of an origin story for Zoe as well.
Oh, yeah.
And they talked about this a couple times that these Elibriums are oftentimes hanging out in this place called Halls of the Living, and
Mhm.
it's actually a reality TV show.
Yeah,
It's
the
run
halls of the living
on
have always
EOS.
been
Yeah,
basically a giant
yeah,
studio where
yeah.
the living fight for the pleasure of the undead.
So I thought that was interesting. And again, just going kind of through the keynote stuff, they talked a lot about the Infinity deck, which we mentioned
Mhm.
already. They talked about the Starfinder 2 novel, Era of the Eclipse.
Mhm.
I guess. Oh yeah, and this talks about people who are on the ground like right after the gap happened. Basically,
Right,
Yeah,
and the
it's
they're
rise of the
lived.
Hell Knight Order of the
Yes,
Eclipse. Yep.
yeah.
yeah. So kind of that lived experience there. Then a whole bunch of other Pathfinder stuff, which we've talked a little bit about. And yeah, and that was kind of. I'm going to leave that at that. Okay, so next they went to organized play, which we've talked a little bit about here on the last couple episodes. Just a couple things there that were new. They're going to have be releasing 2 scenarios a month, which is where they were at kind of later in first season and through a bunch of the seasons until they
Mhm.
slowed down. So they're going to have 26 scenarios a year is what their plan is, but the scenarios are basically half length compared to what they were before. So they're going to be a 2-level range, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, so on and so forth. They'll run about 2 to 3 hours each. The first year is going to have a whole lot of low-level adventures.
Yeah,
All of
makes
them will
sense.
be self-contained, though some might tie to a greater arch. So,
I mean, I've kind of wondered if the scenario, just sort of people sort of talking about how they play a society scenario for like 6 hours as someone who is aging rapidly before your very eyes. That sounds like a long time to be playing a
Yep.
single
yeah,
session of a game.
that was one of my big complaints when they asked for feedback. I said I actually put specifically I want them 2 to 3 hours. So I'm
There you
glad
go.
they
Huh?
listened to
Well,
me.
you got
Uh,
that,
You
yeah.
got it,
yeah.
John. You did it.
Well, because I'll tell you that if you have somebody who's very experienced, the old scenarios, you could get them done in 3 to 4 hours. You could GM it and do a good job.
Yeah.
But if you were less experienced, they typically went 5 to 6 hours.
That's
Okay.
right.
And
Yeah.
you need something where somebody new can come in and have room to grow and improve. And I think 2 to 3 hours just makes it a whole lot easier for them. So I
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
that was useful. They
This was
also said,
something
oh,
that's
go ahead.
yeah. This is something that was mentioned in the adventure panel later, but like specifically about scenarios, or at least the society, is that they're going to have a player's guide. Now I know that society has always
Yes.
sort of put out PDFs that sort of been like an introduction of this is how you do stuff, and whatnot. Has it been called a player's guide before, or is it just this a new
It originally
terminology?
was called a guide to organized play.
Okay, yeah,
And they had one for Pathfinder Society. They had one for Starfinder Society.
right,
Originally, it was a PDF, and then basically now it's a website that you go to,
right, okay, yeah, yeah.
right? Yeah, to get things.
Um,
I don't know if the player's guide is going to be a PDF or a
I
website.
think it'll. I assume it'll. I kind of assume it'll be a PDF because they
That's what I
mentioned
was thinking too.
Jessica had mentioned that the player's guide also contains two new ancestries,
Yes, yes.
right?
You were skipping through all the good stuff, but we can go right
Well,
to there.
I'm sorry.
No, no, no.
I wanted to talk a little bit. I guess I don't know.
No,
Um,
no. I think it's great. Go ahead.
this
Please
is
do.
this is what I because again, let's say the sort of things that were sort of mentioned a couple times. This is one thing that I remembered about society stuff, is that they're putting out the Akeshti and Shobad ancestries
Yes.
in the sort of player's guide because I think
Yeah.
the first couple, or at least one of the first couple scenarios, takes place on Akaton. Um, uh,
Yes. Yes. Several
yeah,
do. Yeah.
It's a big deal. Hackathon's kind of the big deal.
yeah, and oh, it's right because there's a spaceship crashes onto it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some
that's right.
special that kicks it off that with
Yeah,
this
what a yeah,
on
what's up?
Akaton. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but I was very excited.
Yeah.
I was very pleased to hear that you can still shoot blood out of your eyes as an Akeshi,
Yes.
because
Yeah,
was my favorite
she
thing
did
about
mention
Akeshi.
that they've changed the Akechi a little bit.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the kind of, the Hulk version of the Akechi is a little bit different.
The
So the
riveting
the
process was
riveting.
always a little weird,
Yeah.
Right.
uh, culturally, just strange,
Yeah.
and yeah, just sort of like a little ick, but
Yep.
good,
I'm
good,
glad that
good
Yes.
they
change. Me
revisited
too.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Two
It's
other
mainly
things that
because
were. Go
everyone,
ahead.
all Keshtis went to therapy basically,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that sort
Right.
of helped them control their hulking out.
Yes. So, they did mention that we're going to go back to Salvation's End, which I don't know if either of you know what that means.
I do. It's a
It's
weird moon with weird nonsense in it.
yeah.
And organized
So
play goes there, has gone there multiple times.
Yeah.
yes, and so we're going back. So we're really excited about that. And then this was kind of a really cool thing. I put 2 stars by it. If you
Ooh,
play or GM a Starfinder 2 second edition scenario before September 5th, you get to play one Skittermander in Pathfinder second edition.
In
okay.
Pathfinder Second Edition.
Yes. You can earn a
Sure.
boon to play a Skittermander in Pathfinder, basically. So Skittermanders aren't Pathfinder critters
Right.
until
They're
now.
just well. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
I,
I'm sure the Pathfinder people will have a thing or two to say about whether or not they actually are on the planet.
okay. Um, Also, just to kind of complete out workplace stuff, Strix are now going to be a free ancestry in Pathfinder Second Edition as of this weekend,
Cool.
and there's going to be a venture gossip archetype.
Fun.
Adventure
Okay.
what? Adventure Gossip?
Gossip, venture
Yeah,
gossip
That's kinda cool.
archetype.
there's been these what blogs, that's what they're called, right? About the venture captains sort of gossiping about things that are going on and sort of in world rumors flying about most likely sort of like giving you hints about the scenarios and stuff like that. So I can imagine venture gossip might be fun. It might I don't know how quickly, I'm gonna turn this ship around and talk a little bit about something that we mentioned in our panel about the field propagandist archetype that it's in Battle Cry.
Oh,
That basically is
okay.
like it's as close to the I heard a rumor powers you can from Umbrella
From
Academy that
Umbrella
you can kind
Academy,
of get.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just basically like, well, I heard a rumor you guys are vulnerable to silver, and then you can, sort of do stuff like that, propaganda, or like, oh, my guys are so tough, and then they get tougher, kind of stuff.
Nice.
That's neat.
That I
Yeah,
like
it's
that
fun.
actually. All right. The adventure panel.
The adventure panel. I mean, we talked. They talked about Murder Metal City and a little bit of about. I think they just mentioned Guilt of the Grave World, and then the society stuff that I had just mentioned.
Right.
And
And
then
they
and the
mentioned
Infinity
something
deck.
else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of possibly using it as a tool to in upcoming sort
In
of
game.
scenarios and
Yeah.
showing it up, which is going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. This is so a touch related to that. Did either of you happen to catch the actual play that came up that later Friday night that Jenny was running? That sort of was a sort of a preview of Murder in Metal City, like the casino area of that
Oh.
adventure.
I didn't want to
Um,
spoil it.
Fair enough.
Oh.
That's fair. I didn't catch it either, but I was just sort of noticing that it had some sort of like we had some good guests, some sort of actual play guests, guests from the actual play, sort of sphere
Oh.
world that was so that's and it was run by Jenny, so kudos.
Wow.
That sounded like that was pretty exciting. I bet.
Yeah. Well, hopefully
People
somebody
like B.
else
Dave
will chime
Walters
in on
and
it.
another name I can't quite remember now. I was trying to look it up earlier and I can't find it.
All right. All right. Well, I want to mention one other
Yes.
thing for adventures. They talked about the free RPG Day release
Oh
in
yeah, yeah.
June. Battle for Nova Rush, which introduces a new iconic starship for Starfinder Society.
Neat.
That's right. Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. They talk more about the other things we did. They mentioned there's no ancestries in the alien core. That's something Mike Kimmel said.
Oh, that's right. There was a question
Yeah.
from chat, I think.
Yep.
There's
Anacytes.
plenty of other
Yeah.
ancestries and all the other products. So I think
Yes.
Even in the
everyone will be fine.
organized play documentation, for
I
Yep.
goodness
know.
sakes, they
Yes.
don't need him in the alien
Don't need them
core.
in Alien Corp.
And that's I think that's smart because
Oh
what
yeah.
that does is it relegates the alien core to be specifically a game master book. There's no reason for players to be looking into it and then learning what all the secrets of all the monsters are.
Yeah.
And then the
Makes
last couple bits they mentioned, anacytes do not have souls. SROs do.
hmm Yep. That's what sets them apart.
That's what sets
Sounds
them
like
apart.
SRO propaganda to me.
Yeah. All right. And then kind of the last panel that we'll talk about real quick was the Starfinder star map. And again, I put that in our Discord and I'll show that up here so people can see. Obviously, we're in May, so we've already had the Galaxy Guide release. August, we get a whole bunch of stuff. Infinity Deck, Starfinder Player Core, Murder in Metal City.
I gotta
The
make sure I got
Eclipse.
room in my bag at Gen Con for all this stuff. And
Oh,
then hit the booth early for as much of these things as I can get.
GM Core comes in September, so a little bit later. October is Guilt of the Grave World. November is Alien Core.
Alien Corp.
And then they said at Gen Con they will announce stuff after this. I'm guessing that some of
Makes
the
sense.
2026 releases.
Yeah, first quarter
Yeah.
2026
Yeah.
probably would be my guess.
They did show some screenshots showing and talked about how PlayerCore has all the weapons and equipment and stuff.
Mhm.
I thought it was really interesting what Thirsty went into kind of a deep dive about the playtest process and how that
Yeah.
really caused them to kind of iterate on the tons of Excel spreadsheets for weapon tables and things like that, and how that can be how might that be revised after the playtest feedback.
Hmm.
Now
Hmm.
I know that playtest feedback comes in the form of many Excel spreadsheets. And so
Yes.
if some Excel spreadsheets convince you that maybe you need fewer Excel spreadsheets, then I can say the process I think is working as intended.
Yeah. And in fact, he did mention kind of that they got a lot of playtest feedback, and he said some of the things that changed. For example, there's a new traversal trait that allows you to basically, if it says, if you have a feat or something that says take a stride and do something, you can instead substitute swim, fly, burrow, or whatever in that. So you can do
Yeah,
those
that
things.
and from a design perspective, that struck me as really interesting, and I
Mhm.
can I
Yep.
can kind of see why. But if you're rewriting all the rules as they are in the player core for Starfinder Second Edition, couldn't you just say under the stride or step rule, if you have a burrow, fly, etc., whatever speed, you can use that
No,
in addition instead.
no,
But they
you
can't
can't do that.
because then the rule is not the same as Pathfinder Second Edition.
Well,
Yes.
also because there's a separate action for flying, there's a separate action for burrowing, there's a separate action for swimming.
Right.
So it's not, you can't just attach that to stride. Stride is specifically for using your feeties to walk on land. But yeah,
Look,
I like the idea of this traversal trait too, because it does mainly because it saves about a line and a half of text for, and all of those feats like sudden charge that have it
right.
in there. Otherwise, and does it add a little bit of, like, you got to look that up and know what that trait means, but
Mhm.
that's what the trait system kind of is about.
Mhm. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. They bumped up damage across the board for all weapons.
Heard that, yeah.
Mhm.
Updated lots of spells from the playtest, kind of cleaning them up, updating them up. They
Mhm.
nerfed the operative. is
Keep
is
nerfing
what it
that
sounds like.
operative.
Even
Yeah.
even the playtest errata was nerfing the operative a
Yeah.
little bit. So
Well,
that process was started really early. We got to see some of that
yeah.
in action.
And
Oh
he
yeah,
mentioned specifically like hair trigger is now like a 6th level ability,
yeah. I mean,
rather than
yeah.
away.
That
So
was
this
a
is like, okay.
little.
Yeah. They've really buffed up the Solarian, the solar moat, solar flare abilities, and Nimbus Surge. So it sounds like,
And Solarian gets reactive strike now, I
yep.
heard.
Well,
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
it yeah, it built it into your kind of your solar weapon thing is what it sounded like. Solar.
Welcome.
So I don't know if they just gave him reactive strike or built it into certain types of
Certain
Solarians. I
types of
wasn't quite
things.
clear on that.
Okay.
Let's see. Talk more about adventures, digital version, Starship. Oh, this gets back to the first image that I showed, which I know is Jason's favorite.
Oh, the Swolstrid.
Yeah, the
Is
the
this
Bantrid
from
with cybernetic arms.
like GM Core maybe, or
Um,
Player Core?
Yeah,
Because it
it
can't be
was
in
he
Player Core.
yeah,
talked about it in talking about like designing
yeah,
maybe designing ancestries or something like this.
Okay.
I don't
yeah.
know. I felt like I was on the outs there. I'm like, it's a swole Bantrid, like everybody's been talking about. I'm like, I've literally never heard about this until
You're
now,
not
and
on the
it's kind
internet
of
enough.
silly.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, no, he
Um,
was talking about all the stuff that GM Core was bringing, hacking, core deities, more world information, and then he just pulls up, oh yeah, creatures, and talking about the planes. Oh, and here's this cool swole bantrid. So,
um,
um,
I if you're gonna tease me with Bantrid with cybernetic arms, when am I gonna get my Bantrid ancestry back in? You know, and also if it hasn't been written yet, I mean, I could write it. Everybody, I did the Bantrid first
well,
edition. I
I don't
could
know,
see.
maybe,
I mean,
maybe,
hit me
maybe,
up. I know
maybe.
you're listening out there, Star friends.
So they talked about a little bit more about how cinematic Starship is going to work. How it's explained in the GM core, and they have 3 examples of it. And it talked about scanning a dying sun and asteroid ambush, victory conditions,
Mm,
escape points, how everybody's going to have a role, in your
yeah.
party. so nobody feels left out. So I thought it
Well,
was
and one
kind
of the
of
things I really liked about that is in these cases, in these starship scenes, not necessarily starship combat,
right.
what does success look like is built from the beginning, right? Because it's not always you just blow up the other guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It could be something else that you're working toward. Maybe you're trying to get away, maybe you're trying to meet some sort of goal, and I feel like that adds a lot of options and flexibility and use for the starship scenes, and I'm really excited to see that.
Um, Later on, he was talking about high level creatures in Alien Core. He mentioned about the colossi for Demalco are going to be similar, like a complex hazard, basically. So it sounds similar to how they done it for Star. They don't have mech rules yet, for mechs to fight
Right.
colossi. So that's
Yeah.
how players were gonna do that. Um, they talked about how Guilt of the Grave World is going to end with a massive change to the status quo, and how they're
Mhm.
wanting to make big flashy things, big flashy changes to kind of the living. It's not really a world, living galaxy of
Galaxy.
Starfinder Second Edition. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Trying to keep the lore from before, but pushing it
Like,
forward into the
yeah.
future. What's happened since then and what's happening now, in
Yeah.
in kind of changing that up. So
You always got to be keeping that moving forward so it feels like a real place.
he mentioned two of the creatures that he wrote. That the one that's on the cover of Galaxy Guide, the
Yeah.
Illuminant,
The 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 fractal looking
yeah, the
thing.
Illuminantula. It's like a Illuminati tarantula thing. 25th level. He said before how that was the highest level thing, and he mentioned how this was something left over from the first ones that came. That's kind of the
Well, the first
overarching
ones.
story of
Yeah.
for Starfinder Society coming out. He also said he did another first one's creature at 20th level. Then he did a bunch of demons or daemons, I guess. Um, and I didn't quite get the names, but basically, um, one of them, it's like when you are like doing copy and pasting and messing things up on when you're, it's like a typo daemon is what it sounded like to me. He said.
Okay.
I thought that was. Oh, and then a civis daemon, so kind of is in online spaces, social
Mm.
media, kind of,
The Doom
you
Scroll
know,
Daemon.
yes, doom scroll, kind of
Yeah.
like that. And the big thing that I thought was really cool about it is these are things that could only really exist in a high tech area. That's why
Oh
these
yeah.
were
Yeah. Yeah.
new,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to the world. So I thought those were kind of neat. He mentioned a whole bunch of other critters that were in the Alien Core, but pretty much carried over a lot of favorites from first edition. They did mention there's
Yeah.
new dragon types that are going to be there. Talked about how you could just take these things and drop them into a Pathfinder Second Edition uh, adventure to make it a little more using.
More confusing. Yeah.
um,
Or more awesome, have
yes,
Obadiah and Amiri fight shoulder to
yes,
shoulder.
yes. Um, there's going to be blog fiction coming in June.
Oh
Kind
boy.
of
Well, that's good.
meet the iconics.
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
Oh, those are
Yeah,
good,
Yeah.
yeah.
Always fun.
yeah. And these were in response to some questions that people were asking. A lot of people were concerned that there's no big adventure paths coming out. And what Thirsty says, because they have to do so much at the launch, they didn't, the whole team, and it's a small team, were working on that. They didn't have time to do a whole bunch of big adventures with the launch. So,
Like Dead Sons was, yeah.
right. So they alluded to
And
that coming, basically.
yeah, I mean, and Dead Sons wasn't 100% all the way out with it was just the first volume,
That's true.
right? Like there was time to sort of like spool up the entirety of the thing. You could just do the first one, like a little bit like you couldn't necessarily do a Murder in Metal City and the first volume of an AP. Yeah, because Murder in Metal City kind of feels, like you said, it's got the length of a volume of an AP. So that's their sort of first dip into it, I think, right? And the team was, just they're human beings, people. Let them have lives outside of the job.
Right. Yes.
Please don't murder, don't kill them any more than they're killing themselves. To put this stuff out, because it's a lot of great stuff.
But I will say that it sounds like there will be some big announcements at Gen Con as well, which I
Yeah,
imagine will be
looking forward.
hardcovers and adventure paths. That's
We'll
my
have to
We'll
guess.
see.
see.
We'll see.
Anyway, so that's kind of my 20 pages of notes.
Very nice.
You guys see anything fun?
Well, let me get my notes out. Here we go.
Your 20 pages?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll post up some of this art that
Um,
they had as well. So some if
yeah,
I
I interjected the stuff that I did.
yeah
Infinity Deck, super, super exciting.
yeah
Murder on Metal City, I was sold on, then unsold on, and now resold
I
on.
know me
So
too.
Mhm.
I'm thinking well, especially since it's the only adventure that's going to be out right away. I thought we could wait and do something else for our actual play, but I think now it's going to have to be Murder in Metal City because we got to
All
start in
right. Okay.
August because our other one's going to run out, and we need new content for that.
August, September, October. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think there's a lot of cool stuff coming, and I can't wait. I can't wait, Gen Con, to see it all in person and then
Yeah.
see what's coming next.
and
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm John.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Jason, and this has been Digital Divination.